feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Shrimp Tank right here, where every week we bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs and business owners in and around the country. We've been excited to interview more than 1,000 entrepreneurs right now, and entrepreneurship is booming across the United States. And if you're watching this for the first time, always go to shrimptankpodcast.com. You can see the interviews with all of the amazing business owners, and they'll give you tips and tricks and techniques that you can use if you're starting a business, if you're running a business right now, or the guests that we'll bring in just a few minutes today. If you're thinking about exiting that business for a pile load of money, you've got to do it the right way. As always, you can find our show on iHeartRadio, prominently featured on there. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or anywhere around the internet. Because remember, you want to get an MBA in entrepreneurship. You think you're going to do that in school? No way. It's going to happen from the school of hard knocks when you get out there and you run a business. And who better to learn from than other businesses that are out there? Of course, I'm joined every week by my co-host, Lee Heisman. And today, in just a few minutes, we're very, very excited to bring in Michelle Seiler Tucker. She is the CEO of Seiler Tucker Incorporated, a 20-year veteran, folks, of helping more than 1,000 businesses exit. And the thing is, you can see in her background today, you want to exit poor or do you want to exit rich? And she's got a great book that you can get at exitrichbook.com, chock full of great information. And we'll talk to her in just a minute. And Lee, I thought there'd be no better way to just start a program today to say, look, I've been in the financial business for 30 years now. And I can remember distinctly back in the late 90s when people said valuations are just nuts on companies. Like, how are these companies worth billions and billions of dollars? And then I saw, Lee, well, you may not know this because you're married and you shouldn't know this, but there's an app out there that apparently maybe not all the kids, but a bunch of the kids use called Bumble. Have you heard of that? That Bumble?
I have heard of it, Ted. I've heard of it through the grapevine, obviously.
So I don't know, Lee. When I run a business, I actually like making profit. It puts dollars in my pocket, but apparently you don't need to make profit anymore to sell your company for a lot of money, because this company lost $116 million last year, Lee, and just went public for $7 billion. $7 billion. What do you make of that?
Well, here's what I make, Ted. It looks easy. There's unicorns out there, but I think that they're not a dime a dozen. It's obviously finding the needle in the haystack. And that's why we have our guest on today. Most entrepreneurs that want to open a business, run a business, grow a business, they want to do it either for a lifestyle business or they want to do it to exit, of course. And who better than to have on our show to learn how do you do that as a business owner, but also why the heck are these other valuations? Is that something that's realistic, Ted? I don't know how that happens, but this kind of like the stock market, and it's something tough to talk about these days, the stock market, but they always joke, right? What's that statement, Ted? The stock market is a graph of rich people's feelings. And these valuations almost feel like this emotional decision on how to quantify and qualify a business, where I know our guest is going to talk about terms like EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. She's going to explain to our listeners exactly how and why you run a business and exactly the quantifiable results, Ted. Not like those unicorns.
I know, because you're rich, you don't like losing money. I know that. But I wanted to ask you the other question in here, which I think is interesting, and then we'll bring Michelle in, which is, since Elon Musk said, I'm going to put $1.5 billion of my corporate cash into Bitcoin, we saw Square buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin. Do you see the common business owner that has an operating account of $1 million eventually taking $100,000 or $200,000 and trying to increase their balance sheet, or maybe decrease their balance sheet by buying Bitcoin?
So I think if you're talking about $1 million, Ted, you're saying 10 to 20%. I would recommend, that is the future. And Ted, you're in the finance world, and we'll have Michelle echo in on this. But we know that cryptocurrency, we know that a universal currency, we know will eventually be our future. So I may not say 10 or 20% of their operating expense, but just dabble into it, get a little comfortable with some crypto, and understand not everything is coin, not everything is actual dollars and cents. There's a lot of crypto that's, the technology behind it. So do your research before you invest in anything.
Very, very interesting stuff. You can't ignore that technology is changing the world we live in every single day, in every facet, in every business. And we're excited to have on Michelle Seiler Tucker today, who's the CEO of Seiler Tucker. They've helped over 1,000 businesses sell. That's a lot of businesses. I've seen a whole bunch in my career, but that's really having an expert by your side, somebody who knows how to sell a business. And Michelle, how did you decide to get into the business of helping business owners sell their business?
Hello, how are y'all?
Great today.
Oh,
Thanks
she
for
said
having me
y'all.
on.
She said
I
y'all.
did say y'all.
Thank you.
I'd be better if I was at Cafe Du Monde with you, but that's the.
I'd be better if I was there too, but I'm in my corner office on Poydras Street, downtown New Orleans. So anyway, yes, I do say y'all because I was born in California, raised in Texas, and live in New Orleans. But I got into this business, I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to go sell companies. But I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I've always owned small businesses. I've been in graphics, I've been in print, I've been in event space, technology, medical, all kinds of different businesses. And I did kind of get sucked into corporate America where I had that job. And I actually got recruited from a Fortune 500 company called Xerox. And Xerox really did everything in their power to get me because I had a pretty strong non-compete. So they put their legal team on it and got me. And they wanted to get me because I was beating them on every single deal. So anyway, I went to work for Xerox and I was there for about 6 months. And my nickname very quickly became the closer.
Yes, the
because
closer.
every time the closer.
Did you drink? Did you get your coffee? Did you get your coffee like Glengarry Glen Ross?
Oh yeah.
Did you close your deals? Only closers get coffee, Michelle.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's funny because the reason they recruited me is I was working for OSE at the time, and they would send in Team Xerox. So they send like 4 or 5, 6 men in suits, right, with donuts and coffee and everything, and it would just be me. And I would always win. They could never beat me. So anyway, they recruited me, and then they would always say, well, look, if you can't close a deal, get Michelle. She'll close it. She can close anything. She's the closer. So within 6 months, my manager came to me and she said, Michelle, you really should apply for the regional vice president's position over 95, 100 salespeople. She said, you probably won't get it, or you're not going to get it because you've only been here for 6 months. And Xerox doesn't promote unless you've been here 2 years, plus you're up against people who've been here for years and years. And she says a 3-month grueling process with all the top level executives at Xerox. I said, well, why would I ever waste all that time and apply for something I'm never going to get? It makes no sense. And she said, because it's a learning experience. You'll learn so much in the process. So I said, okay.
You might be hitting things, Ted, with your hands.
Got it.
Sorry, Michelle.
Ted, tie your hands behind your back.
Yeah, I had to get one of the things off here on the screen.
Okay, so
There.
I said, okay, so I went ahead and threw my name in the hat, and she's right. It was a very grueling process with all the high-level execs doing demonstrations, presentations, Q&As. I did get it. Against all odds, I did get the position, and so I guess I really am the closer. But it's funny because it's like, be careful what you wish for, because I actually hated it. And not only that, but companies should never promote their number one salesperson. Keep your number one salesperson where they are. All right. So anyway, they promoted me into vice president, and I love management. I love leadership. What I don't love is management and leadership in a Fortune 500 company. Well, there's always this red tape. We would have meetings, to schedule follow-up meetings, to have more meetings, and really never getting anything accomplished. I like to solve problems. I like to come up with solutions. I like to build relationships that last a lifetime. And that wasn't happening in that position. So I ended up leaving Xerox after a year, and I went into franchise sales, franchise development, franchise consulting. I actually partnered with a franchisor and became an equity partner in their company. Sold hundreds upon hundreds of franchises, but then everybody kept asking me, all my buyers kept asking me, Michelle, do you have any existing locations? We don't want to be in the franchise model. And I'm like, and I kept saying, no. And I'm like, why am I saying no? I need to say yes. So that's when I started my mergers and acquisitions firm, started selling businesses. But then I learned very quickly that what Steve Forbes says is true. And Steve Forbes endorsed my book, Exit Rich. The 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell. That's 80% of businesses not selling. Now, the Mergers and Acquisitions Association will say 90% doesn't sell. So it's really between 80 to 90%. So then I started saying, well, gosh, if I don't fix these businesses, if I don't grow them and build them and put the owners on a build to sell program, then they're gonna end up going out of business, and I'm gonna starve to death.
Well, Michelle,
So
that leads me to this question, because you just teed it up beautifully. For your clients and for our listeners out there, explain to them, when you own a business, planning your exit strategy from day one. That's a really big piece of it, because you kind of just said that, where, hey, I got to build them to sell it, right? You just don't come in, listen to a successful business, and you're going to put it on the market like a commodity. That's not what you do. Explain exactly how from day one you actually start to planning that sale.
yes, and I'll tell you what I tell my clients from day one is you really have to plan your exit from day one of buying or starting that business. Most business owners don't think about selling their business until an internal or external catastrophic event has occurred. Internal could be health issues, death, partner dispute, divorce. External is you're in it, this pandemic. So you never want to sell your business when a catastrophic event has occurred, because your business is typically going down. You want to sell the business in its prime, when it's booming. And so many business owners want to hold on to that business when it's booming, and they want to rake in all the cash. But what they don't realize is what goes up must come down. At some point, you might go out of business. So sell it while it's booming. So let's go back to what I call the STGPS exit model. And I tell my clients, look, number one, you got to plan your exit strategy using this model. When you guys want to drive somewhere, I've been in Atlanta. You can get lost very easily.
Yeah,
So if you want to pull out your
Peachtree Road for
phone,
everything.
so you pull out your phone, you put in Google Maps, and you plug in your
Location,
GPS.
destination.
destination, location. Yes.
Destination. First, you plug in your destination, because the GPS already picks up your location most of the time. So you plug in your destination. If you don't know where you're driving, where are you going to go?
In circles.
In circles.
Absolutely.
That's what happens to business owners. They don't know where they're driving to. They have no destination. They have no, final end game. So they're driving around in circles, and they're driving up and down the financial hills. So I tell them, plan your exit, figure out your destination. What do you want to sell your business for? What's your end game? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I can't come up with a number. I'm like, oh my God, pick a number. It doesn't matter. Pick a number. You might hit it, you might not, but it's a starting place. You can always adjust yourselves along the way, but pick a number. So let's say you want to sell it for $20 million. Great. Now we have a number, right? Now what does a GPS exit model need to know? It needs to know where you're starting from. What's your current location? In other words, in business GPS exit model, what's your current valuation? Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but most business owners never even get their business evaluated.
I know.
I just met with an owner the other day. He's been in business 50 years, never had a business evaluation. So that's
how does somebody do that, Michelle? People, I want to interrupt and just ask, a lot of business owners are listening right now, and they're going to raise their hand up if they could and say, how do I do that? How do I even know to do that? How do I know when to do it? And who do I reach out to for that? Yeah, so that's a great question. And let me tell you, you need to do it every year. And don't go to, oh my gosh, do we have any CPAs listening? Possibly.
Well, Sharon Lecter is my co-author of Exit Rich, and she is a CPA. But I don't necessarily advise going to a CPA to evaluate your business. You really need to go to an expert, a mergers and acquisitions expert that's done lots of deals, because valuations is more of an art rather than a science. And a lot of times, not all CPAs are created equal. I've had clients come in and say, my CPA told me I could get 5 times gross, and you're at, 4 times EBITDA, Michelle. And I'm like, great, let's call your CPA and tell them to buy your business, because nobody else is going to buy it at 5 times gross. So exactly. A lot of times they might not always know how to evaluate businesses. They don't know how to identify the certain synergies that buyers are willing to pay more money for. So you really want to go to someone like us at Seiler Tucker, or an advisor who has, at least 10, 15, 20 years of experience, who's done hundreds, if not thousands of deals. And because what we do for our clients, though, is we don't just do an evaluation. There's so much more than that. We do evaluation, plus we do projections, 5-year projections, plus we evaluate them on what we call the 6 Ps, which we'll cover in a few minutes. And then we put them on evaluation 1-year checkup. So every year they come back to us on that 1-year checkup. And we also have a mentors program that we can put them in where we can help them strengthen those 6Ps, build on their synergies, continue evaluating their business to get them closer and closer and closer to that $20 million price.
So what is a business owner going to learn when they read the Exit Rich book? What kind of key principles do you teach them about? Because obviously no owner expects to exit poor. But as you were saying, 80 to 90% may not even think about exiting altogether at the right time. So what are the key principles they're going to learn in the book?
So one of the things we're talking about right now is the GPS exit model, which I need to finish. They're going to learn that in the book. They're going to learn about the 6Ps. They're going to learn about why 70% of businesses are going out of business after being in business 10 years. That's out of 27.6 million businesses. They're going to learn a seller sanity check. They're going to learn, how to go through that process and when to determine the best time to sell. They're going to learn negotiations. They're going to learn how to create bidding wars. They're going to learn about valuations. They're going to learn about packaging their business for sale. They're going to learn about synergies, the 5 different types of buyers, what their negotiation strengths are, and how to negotiate with each, due diligence, closing, etc. I mean, everything from A to Z. This is a 325-page book.
So, I have a interesting one for our listeners as well, because it's what I'm curious about is, when you grow a business, you have to have profits, right? Mm-hmm. And not everybody goes about profit. That's true. That's a good point. For those non-unicorns, like the app you were speaking of before, most companies have to have profits. And we talk about EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, accumulation. But
and amortization.
Amortization, apologize. Yes. And that is why you do what you do. But I'm very sure that you have some profit mistakes. Now, you teed this up a little earlier, and this may or may not be one of them, but something you said, which resonated with me, was when you were the top sales rep, they promoted you. And your recommendation is you have a top sales rep, keep them right where they are. And I'm not saying that is one of your top biggest profit mistakes, but can you give us your top 3 biggest profit mistakes companies make?
Okay. So do you want me to finish your GPS exit model or no?
Oh, continue. Yes.
Sure.
I got to keep you guys on track.
That's true. That's true.
We are all over the place.
Well, you have so much knowledge, so we want to try to extract as much as we can.
So back to the GPS exit model, you need to get that business evaluation checkup, an annual business evaluation checkup, right? So let's say you're worth $5 million today and you want to sell for $20 million. What's the next thing you need to know? Time frame. Let's say you want to do this in 10 years. So now you got to start of a plan, right? $20 million. You're worth $5 million. You want to do it in 10 years. You got to reverse engineer your plan, and you got to determine who's your buyers going to be. Not buyer, but buyers. Why buyers? Because I can promise you, if sellers come to me all the time and say, Michelle, I got the buyer. I just need you to help me negotiate with this one buyer. I'm like, well, I will, but I can promise you this deal is probably going to not go through because most of them don't. We need backup buyers. We always have backup buyers. Plus, how can I create competition? How can I get you the highest price tag on the sale of your business if you got one buyer? How can I create a bidding war with one buyer? So there's 5 types of buyers. This is very important for your listeners because most people don't know this. There's 5 types of buyers. You need to determine what buyers are going to be right to buy your business. Number 1, 90% of buyers are first-time buyers. First-time buyers buy small businesses, not $20 million companies. So you can rule them out. Turnaround specialists buy distressed assets, not $20 million companies, rule them out. PEGs. Private equity groups buy based on platforms and add-ons. They buy EBITDA, typically $3 million and up for a platform and under $1 million for add-ons. Then we have our strategics and our competitors. Now, strategics and competitors are really the best type of buyer because they're paying for synergies. They're looking for that talent. They're looking for those contracts. They're looking for that database. They're looking for, those celebrity endorsements. Something that's going to catapult their business to the next level. So they usually pay a much higher multiple if we can identify those synergies and bring it to their attention and then show them what overhead they can cut, which will increase EBITDA from day 1 of closing, plus how they can take advantage of economy of scales. Yep. We also have sophisticated serial entrepreneurs. That's the 5th type of buyer. They're industry agnostic. They don't care about the industry. They care about cash. They chase EBITDA. Okay, so that's your 5 types of buyers. Then you have to figure out, if I want to sell my business for $20 million, where does the top line need to be? Where's the gross? You need to know your numbers. Where's the gross profit margin need to be? Most importantly, the EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, has to be between $3 million to $5 million, $3 million to $5 million to get a $20 million check, depending upon what synergies you have. Then one of the next steps is, what kind of synergies do these buyers look for? And how are they willing to pay more for? So where should my focus be? What proprietary asset should I be building? And then the last step in the exit model is your why. Nothing ever gets done without a big why. We all know that. If it was easy to sell a $20 million company, everybody would be doing it. So you have to have a strong enough why to keep you motivated, to keep you in the game. Entrepreneurship is not always easy, keep you weathering the financial storms. So that's the GPS exit model. Then what we do with our clients, then we take them in what we call the 6 Ps, which is the infrastructure on how to build a business. Now, what I can do, Lee, is I can answer your questions about the mistakes that business owners make and incorporate the 6 Ps on killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
I was dying to hear about the 6 Ps because you've mentioned it a number of times as well.
Okay. So first and foremost, one piece of history I want to give you, gentlemen, because I think it's very important. When I wrote my first book in 2013, Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth, I did the research and learned about 95% of businesses go out of business, right? We all know that. I'm not shocking you with this. However, when I wrote Extra Rich in 2019 and 2020, I shocked myself and I shocked Sharon Lechter because the landscape has flip-flopped. Now it's only 30% of those startups are going out of business, only 30% in those 1 to 5 years. But out of 27.6 million companies, those businesses that have been in business or 10 years or longer, 70% of those companies are going out of business. You hear about the public companies all the time. Toys R Us in business 75 years, goes out of business. JCPenney's, Steinmart, Pier 1, Godiva closing down 1,500 locations, GNC closing down 900 locations. But you're not hearing about all the private companies on every street corner in every town. These business owners are exiting poor. They're selling for pennies on the dollar, closing their business, or even worse, filing bankruptcy. So why is that? Let me tell you why that is, and then we'll jump into the 6 Ps and the top 10, the mistakes business owners make. The number one reason for that, the biggest mistake that owners are making, is they stop doing what I call AIM. AIM, A-I-M, always innovate and market. Always innovate and market. They stop innovating. They stop marketing. You guys are innovative. You came up with Shrimp Tank. You got to innovate. You're either growing or dying. There is no in between. I got news for you. Maybe you know that. True. But you're growing or dying. These businesses have been in business 10 years and longer. These owners are married to their business concept. They want to do things the way they've always done. And you can't do that. You got to innovate. All right. So the 6 Ps, number one, one of the biggest mistakes business owners make, Lee, is business owners work in the business, not on the business. And the business is 1,000% dependent upon them. Yeah, Lee.
I know it.
So the business is 1,000% dependent upon them. I had a dentist that's been in business 45 years, wants to sell. One dentist, 3 dental hygienists. He says, Michelle, I can't stay past 60 days. And I'm like, then you can't sell the business.
And how limiting is that for your clients?
Their clients leave. What's that?
How limiting is that for listeners out there? If they're trying to sell, and this is part of your consultation, of course, how limiting is it there? So in the business, they're not going to be able to leave. No one would want to buy them if it's completely their business wrapped around them. It's not scalable.
Yeah, because it's a job. That dentist has a job. He doesn't have a business.
Right.
He clocks in, he goes to work. He gets paid on what he does. If he's not there, then maybe he gets paid on what the dental hygienist does. But other than that, he doesn't have a business that works for him that generates revenue. He has to work to get paid. And so when you pull him out, the clients leave. So this is very, very, very important. I'm not going to tell you I can't sell the business if the business is tied to you. However, we will never maximize value. And the sales price will be contingent upon how long you stay. It will be
and most people, if they sell, Michelle, they're not looking to stay very long. They would just rather keep their job. So it is their counterintuitive.
That really depends. That really depends, Lee. In the service businesses, I was just on a service podcast yesterday. Chiropractors, dentists, MDs, real estate agents, etc. In the service businesses, that is true. That's so true. You know why? Because they're burned out. They're tired. They've been working long hours for a very long time. and they've been married to their job. And you're right, they don't want to stay. The larger companies, they will stay because they still kind of love what they do. They actually have a company, they have employees in place, they have a management team. They'll stay, and they also know they're not going to be able to sell unless they stay for 2 to 3 years. So that's up 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. I mean, we're selling a company right now between 60 to 70 million, and the owner's going to stay. He's going to retain probably 20% equity, and he wants to stay because he said, I grew this company as far as I can based upon my business acumen. I want a much larger partner with much bigger working capital so I can grow my legacy and get this to a $500 million company versus a $72 million company. Make sense?
Very much.
All right. So number one is people. You don't build a business, you build people, and people build a business. And owners have to focus on their strengths, hire their weaknesses.
Very true.
So you have to put the right people in the right seat. And, Ted, you really need to ask the who question. Who opens the door? Who handles customer service? Absolutely. Who handles marketing, legal, accounting, manufacturing, logistics, environmental? The clue here is you should never be next to the who.
You should not be, I got to make a shirt for that, Ted. You should never be next to the
who. You should never be next to the who. So
now someone is going to think I'm referencing Dr. Seuss, by the way. That's the only concern.
All of your listeners need to write down all the who's in their business, like all the tasks, and then put a name next to each one. And your name, you should be at the top. You should be the visionary. So many times the visionary entrepreneurs, typically their core competency is a visionary, right? They're not an integrator. They need to be the visionary. They need to have an integrator, have a management team, have those people in place. You will never build a sustainable business that you can scale if you're next to all of these different tasks and doing all of these tasks.
Very true.
Very true.
So number 2 is product. Product is your service, your industry. You have to ask yourself, is your product industry thriving or dying? Do you have an Amazon or do you have a Blockbuster? Unfortunately, because of COVID, there's many industries that were once thriving, now dying. They have a Blockbuster in their hands versus other industries that were dying are now thriving. So I always tell my clients to ask these 3 transformational questions. This is very important for your listeners. Amazon did this back in the 90s. Amazon asked themselves, what business are we in? And I said, well, we're in a book selling business. We sell books. What do we do really, really, really well? We do fulfillment really well. What business should we be in? Duh. We should be in a fulfillment business. Those 3 questions alone transformed Amazon from a small bookseller to a worldwide multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that they are today. These are very important questions. The problem with most entrepreneurs is they get so stuck in a day-to-day, in a transactional, that they stop being transformational, and you don't grow through transactional, you grow through transformational. Does that make sense?
Very much.
Absolutely.
Now, processes are a 3rd P. Processes are kind of like exit strategy. Business owners don't want to think about them until something bad occurs. Like we have a manufacturing company we're selling, and an employee got hurt. It was a catastrophic event that happened. It was really bad on the manufacturing floor. All kinds of lawsuits coming down. It could possibly put them out of business. And the owner said to me, we need a policy and procedure for health and safety in this department. I'm like, you needed it before this. You're a little late. So you really need to think about processes from day one of starting or buying a business. Of course, you tweak them, you improve them along the way, but you need to design them from the beginning. And here's where most people go wrong, most business people. They design the processes based upon their own agenda.
Right.
Not based upon the customer experience. And then they wonder why they have unhappy customers. You need to base your process around the customer experience. Did you guys ever watch the movie The Founder?
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, best movie ever, right?
Yeah.
So back in what was it, 1940, 1950, I don't know what year, but the McDonald brothers started McDonald's because back then they had the Sonic type drive-ups and the food was always cold, the order always took so long, it was always wrong. So McDonald brothers said, we're going to develop a fast food restaurant around our customer experience. We want the customers to experience great tasting food that is hot and fast. Do you remember when they went to the tennis courts and mapped out the process?
Yes.
And erased it, and then they went back and they did that all day long until they figured out who takes the order, who toasts the buns, who cooks the burgers, who puts the pickles on the buns and gives it to the client. Now, those processes, because even though they were developed so long ago and tweaked along the way, you can eat at McDonald's anywhere in the world and get the same experience, right?
And we speak about that with Chick-fil-A out of here in Atlanta, out of Georgia. Chick-fil-A is impeccable with their customer service.
I love Chick-fil-A. I think their customer service is far superior than McDonald's. Far superior.
That's why I jumped in and said that. Yep.
Yeah, but you can still eat at McDonald's anywhere in the world and still get the same experience, right?
100%. And the McDonald's experience is the way that Ted lives his life, hot and fast. You're exactly right, Michelle. That's exactly right. It's true. It's true.
But do you have satisfied customers?
His wife hasn't left him yet, so I think that says enough.
So anyway, so many companies get this wrong. How many times have you been on the phone with a company and you have to go through 12 different, props on the phone to get a live person, or you have to talk to a bunch of different people and tell your same story over and over and over again to try to get some resolve?
Oh,
right? It happens all the time.
That's where you lose your clientele. Let me ask a question on your third point, something to integration. I've seen a lot of manufacturing and businesses that you speak of with process, but how much do you promote technology in that phase of your 3 Ps? Because a lot of places are just using a whiteboard or an Excel spreadsheet, and it seems that that's a very painful process to make process driven using technology, but it seems that it's almost integral to go to the next level. Do you use technology for your clients or recommend
We
that?
absolutely do. I was just on the phone with a company yesterday that specializes in that all around the world. And they have technology for gap accounting, plus they have technology for processes to automate everything. So we absolutely incorporate technology. You cannot be efficient. You cannot be productive. You cannot decrease overhead if you don't use technology.
By the way,
I have a company right now that's about to automate and go from 150 employees down to 30. And this is going to happen more and more if they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
100. And Michelle, let me ask a question because I listeners need to hear this. It sounds good on paper, the automation process and the incorporating technology. But would you tell me 98 or 99% of your clients kick and scream during that process? Because how inefficient does a business get during this implementation of new technology? How many steps backwards, like the old country song, how many steps backward do they take before they can actually go forward? Do you have experience with that and any thoughts?
My clients kick and scream on every process I take them through. They kick and scream on the people part. They kick and scream on when I try to get them to think transformationally. They kick and scream on the process. Are you kidding me? Wait till we get to the last P. When we talk about financials, my customers are always kicking and screaming. Are you kidding me? Yeah, no, they do. And, a lot of times I have to bring in other companies. I'll bring in other technology companies, other automation companies. Like I said, we have one company that's selling right now that they can automate and literally go from 150 employees down to 30 employees practically overnight. Yeah. So and you're going to see more and more of this. You are going to see more and more of this because the number one most important thing in any business is people. The biggest problem in any business is people.
That's exactly right.
I'm wondering in there though, you were talking during the 6 Ps process here. I know we're kind of halfway through it about companies having to have EBITDA, but it just seems so much. I know the guys that were taking Wheels Up public here via SPAC, and it just, there's so many companies that seem to be able to get 10 to 15 times revenue, not EBITDA, off of technology. Is that just people overpaying for the business?
Those are SaaS companies. Mostly SaaS companies you're referring to.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that valuation in the next P when we get to it.
Oh, yeah, then I'm 1 P ahead of it here.
Yes, you are.
I guess we're on number 4. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
So number 4, okay, we're done with processes. Let me say this. Processes obviously need to be designed with the customer experience in mind, efficient, productive. You got to have your policy and procedure manuals. You got to have your SOP checklist. You got to have your employee handbooks, your employee contracts, and your non-competes. Because when I bring buyers in to buy that $20 million company that we're planning to sell, that's the first thing they're going to look at.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, look, I sold a company for $18 million I caught the CPA embezzling money during due diligence. She took all the company files and she took everything off the server. So I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get the employees to re-sign their contracts and all the non-competes. It was crazy. So that's one of the first things they're going to look for. So the fourth P, which is the highest value driver, which is what you're talking about, right? So most industries trade, and a lot of what you're talking to, Ted, is a unicorn. Okay. Right. Let's talk about what 98, 99, 99.9% of the businesses trade for. So anything under $1 million in EBITDA, and remember, we're talking about EBITDA, but we really need to talk about adjusted EBITDA because we normalize the financials, we add back all personal expenses.
Right.
Well, not always the owner's compensation, because if we need that owner to stay there, we're not adding back their compensation, but we're going to add back all their personals and non-reoccurring. Okay. On Selling Business right now, we got about $5 million in add backs, and we can prove every penny of it. So anything under $1 million in EBITDA is typically under 5 multiple. Okay. Under 4 multiple. It depends upon the industry, and it depends upon what we're about to talk about next. Anything over $1 million in EBITDA, the higher the EBITDA, typically the higher the multiple. So you're going to be 5 and up. Now, the fourth P is proprietary. This is what can take you from a 5 to a 6 to an 8 to a 10, maybe even a 12. This is proprietary. This is the highest value driver of all the P's. There's 6 pillars to proprietary. So I need another P from you. I need some patience. So number 1 is branding. How well branded are you? Because the more well branded you are, the more I can sell your company for, as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of the consumers. Does anybody want to pay any money for Blockbuster?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Go ahead, Ted. Knock yourself out.
No, I'm kidding.
They're paying for GameStop now.
I was going to say GameStop and Blockbuster. It's about as much as Robinhood will allow.
So branding is huge. Like, do you know who the biggest value, the biggest brand in the world, the most valuable brand in the world? Do you know who it is?
Goodness. I mean, there's so many. Apple.
Pick the top one. Apple. Go with your first choice.
My first choice, Apple.
Apple, $249 billion. That's
Wait, was I right, Michelle?
Yes, you were right.
I'm gonna pull a Costanza, and I'm gonna end right. I'm gonna end on a high note. I'm stepping away. I don't get many right, so I'm glad I guessed that one. Go ahead.
So $249 billion. You probably listened to one of my other podcasts. That's how you got it right.
Absolutely.
But $249 billion, that's just for the brand. That's not inventory, real estate, assets, EBITDA, or anything else. Build your brand, build your exit to exit rich. Trademarks are huge. Trademarks on your company name, trademarks on your podcast, trademarks on my book. You know, anything that's unique, your USP, unique selling proposition, should be trademarked. Now, here's the caveat to trademarks. Most business owners go to their state. You're in Georgia. They go to Georgia. They get a Georgia trademark on their company name, their slogan, their logo, everything else, right? But they never get the federal trademark.
Yeah.
Now, why is it important to have the federal trademark?
That's not just state-wise, right? That would be the whole country. Is that accurate?
I have had many business owners receive a cease and desist letter in the mail that says you cannot use that name any longer because, and I get it from an attorney, because this person owns the federal trademark.
Interesting.
And yes, you can hire an attorney, and yes, you can throw a lot of money at it, but you're going to lose in all likelihood. And you're going to have to start all over again. And it's very difficult to brand. So you're going to have to start the branding process all over again. So spend the $1,500 to $2,000 and go get that federal trademark. What about your podcast? You have a federal trademark on your podcast?
We do have it on our logo in the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. I tell podcast, I'm always on podcasts and I always talk about federal trademarks, and I see podcast hosts go, and they're like, oh, I need to go get a federal trademark.
Absolutely.
So get a federal trademark, protect that. We're selling a business that has probably 12 to 15 different exclusive federal trademarks on their products, and they sell to grocery store retail chains, and each retail chain has a different product that's exclusive to them. Extremely valuable. All right, patents. Do you watch Shark Tank? Or do you only watch Shrimp Tank? Or do you only watch Shrimp Tank?
No, we watch all of the above. All of the above.
So what's the number one thing that all investors ask all inventors?
Of course.
Do you have a patent on this? Do you have a patent on this? Do you have a patent pending? We had a company that was not making any money. Here you go, Ted. Here's one of the answers to your questions. We had a company that really wasn't making money. but they had 18 patents. So we sold them for $18 million. Okay. If they had money, we sell them for a lot more than that.
Yeah, am I incorrect? Speaking of your Apple, you mentioned Apple. Didn't Apple purchase just a ton of Motorola patents at one point for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars? I think there was just simply the purchase of the patents that Apple had purchased from Motorola.
Yeah.
And who uses Motorola anymore?
Or if you're in China, you can just copy it.
It's a valid point, yes. and I want to be clear, guys, you know, we have time flies when you're having fun. So Michelle, keep in mind, we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left with you. I want you to, most importantly, I want you to wrap up your piece, but I also want to talk about your book, Exit Rich, because Ted, everybody knows the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course, which the obviously the co-author of that book actually joined forces with Michelle. So I want to get into that as well before we end. So I don't mean to rush you, Michelle, but I want to make sure.
That was only followed by the one that was Poor Dad, Lots of Divorces. That was
yes.
All right, so I'm going to move on. No interruptions, right?
Go for it. None.
None. Contracts are really valuable. Manufacturing contracts, distribution contracts, vendor contracts, exclusive contracts, client contracts are the most valuable of all. Especially if they have recurring revenue or if they have subscription model. I can get you a much higher multiple for subscription models and recurring revenue. Here's the deal. Here's the caveat to contracts. 99.9% of all sales are asset sales, not stock sales. 100% of all business owners I've ever dealt with never has a 2-sentence transferability clause. So if the buyer is not willing to transfer to a stock sale, or the clients, and I've had this happen to us a few times, the clients are not willing to sign the consent to transfer, then your whole deal can fall apart. So stop what you're doing, go look at your contracts, put the 2-sentence transferability clause and protect yourself. Databases are huge. Here you go, Ted. Databases. WhatsApp was hemorrhaging. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp.
Same.
There's your unicorn. WhatsApp had a synergy that Facebook was willing to pay $19 billion for, and that was 1 billion users. 1 billion users, because they knew they could ROI, they knew they could, get their money back on that investment. So databases are huge. Here's some other big value drivers: celebrity endorsements. We have a client that their products and services are endorsed by Oprah. Really big. Competitors, strategics want to get their products in front of Oprah. Radio personalities, they will only endorse one type of vertical at a time. Only one diet company, only one skincare. So it's very important. Other buyers, strategics and competitors will pay a lot of money for that. My e-commerce companies. So whenever you can get the top 3 positions or top 5 positions on Wayfair, Etsy, Amazon in your specific niche, tremendous value. Okay. So that's how we get bigger numbers, but it's always a percentage of EBITDA unless it's a SaaS company. We have some SaaS companies we're selling right now, and they're going to be, they're all over the map, anywhere from 8. I got one all the way up to 23 times gross revenues.
23.
Unbelievable.
Yep. So my 5th P is patrons. Patrons are your customer base. The golden rule is 80% of your revenues comes from 20% of your clients. If you lose a few clients, you could practically be out of business. So you need customer diversification, not customer concentration. Look, we're selling an advertising media company. They have 5 clients. We're selling them in a $10 million range. 5 clients because they had the 5 top casinos, but they lost 2 during the process. Dropped their revenue in half. They were not sellable anymore. I ended up merging them with another company.
Smart.
So the last P, the most important P to all of your listeners, is profits. The reason I put profits last is because profits is never the problem. Lack of profits is never the problem. It's always a symptom of not operating on one of the other 5 Ps. I have clients that come to me and say, "Michelle, I have a profit problem." I'm like, "No, you have a people problem." Now you have a process problem.
It's true.
Always that. So profits are never the problem. All right. So I'm done with the 6 Ps.
Well, that was very impressive, by the way. But the 6 Ps are not the only thing, Michelle, that you speak of in the book. And I don't want people to think, I listened to Michelle. No. I just got the 6 Ps. I don't need to know her book. I don't need to understand it. Talk a little bit about that as we wrap up, of course.
Yeah, let me talk about that, because the 6 Ps and the GPS exit model, Those are maybe 6 chapters out of a 22 chapter book.
Wow.
So we cover everything from A to Z, not just about selling your business. So I want you to know this book is not just about selling a business. This book is about building a sustainable, scalable asset that is sellable when you're ready. Okay. Because most businesses are not ready for sale. So Sharon Lecter is my co-author, who you mentioned earlier. Co-author of Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, New York Times bestselling author 5 times, written several books in the Napoleon Hill Foundation. She's a CPA, financial literacy expert, advisor to many different presidents. She writes the Mentors Corner after every chapter in my book from her perspective. Plus her husband is an intellectual property attorney, so he's got some stuff in there too. And so our book was endorsed by Steve Forbes, also endorsed by Kevin Harrington, the original shark on Shark Tank, which I'm gonna get Kevin Harrington on Shrimp Tank.
Yes.
And also endorsed by Les Brown, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, and many more. So should I tell them where they can get the book?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you can go get the book. We're in the middle of pre-sales. You can buy it on Amazon. However, I encourage you to go to exitrichbook.com because that's where all the goodies are. $24.79. We will email you the digital download immediately, so you don't have to wait till the book comes out. When it comes out, we will ship it to your doorstep, hardcover to your doorstep. Plus, we will give you a lifetime membership into Exit Rich Book Club. Exit Rich Book Club has video content. So if you like what you're hearing here, there's a lot more of this there. Plus documents to run your business, documents to sell your business. So we have employee handbooks, we have non-competes, we have org charts, sample letter of intent, sample purchase agreement, sample due diligence checklist, and sample closing docs. All of these are there for your review and your download. And guess what, Lee? This is worth over between $25 to $30 million. Not million dollars, thousands. $25 to $30,000, because there are so many documents to run your business and sell your business that if you went to an attorney to create all this, it would cost you $25,000 to $30,000.
Absolutely. She is 100% right, Ted. I know that for certain.
No doubt about it.
And it's all there for your download. Plus, we give you a 30-day free membership in the Club CEOs. And that's where we have a mastermind of entrepreneurs where we ask those transformational questions and help business owners build a scalable business that's sellable and sellable.
Well, look, I wanted to thank you for doing this today. I can't believe how fast 50 minutes have gone by here. It's unbelievable. And listen, if you didn't learn anything for entrepreneurs out there, I mean, definitely go to exitrichbook.com, get all the information today. And again, we talked about this on here. You may not have a profits problem. You have the other 5 Ps that are a problem here that's causing you to have a profits problem. It's probably this read, Michelle, will change their lives if they read the book.
It will. I mean, Steve Forbes says it's an entrepreneurial gold mine. It's a gold mine for entrepreneurs because so many entrepreneurs leave so much money on the table.
Well, we wanted to...
It also talks about how to create a bidding war, which is something we didn't get into. How do you create bidding wars? How do you sell businesses for more? That's all in there as well.
Lee, we're going to have to do a second round of this.
No question about it.
So.
But if Michelle gave every piece of information and every nugget, you wouldn't go out and get her book, or you wouldn't reach out to her and use her as a resource. This is just a small taste of Michelle's expertise. Michelle, I'll be honest with you. I learned a lot today myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. You're going to stop working in your business and start working on it?
that is exactly correct. I would agree with you with that. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs have issues with. I concur 1000%.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, dispensing this advice. Listen, this advice is great because there's a reason that Michelle sold 1,000 businesses. So if you think you have a better answer, you don't. She's seen it 1,000 times already and made it happen 1,000 times already. And someday when you're ready to sell your business, you have 2 choices: exit poor or exit rich. So if you take some of the advice from Michelle today, you can probably walk away with a lot more money at the end of the game.
Thank you. Thanks,
Michelle,
Ted.
thank you so much.
All right.
It's a pleasure being with y'all.
Joining us this week. We'll look forward to seeing everybody next week right here on the Shrimp Tank.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp